What's up, everybody, and welcome back to TarHeelIllustrated.com for another edition of our Daily Drop. I'm Jacob Turner. He's Andrew Jones and AJ. We're here to talk about Carolina's European international market in basketball really being opened up this offseason with the addition of Henry Vesar, who committed a couple months ago, transfer from Arizona, and the most recent one, Luca Bogovac, which I know a lot of Carolina fans are super excited about as well. And he's a guy, again, coming straight from overseas, which we haven't seen at North Carolina in quite a while. And we did a podcast a few months ago where we kind of hit on, the international market. And I think that the topic really was, is Carolina going to kind of maybe dip its toe back into this international market? Because it's something they did in the past, but in the last 10, 15, 20 years, haven't done as much of. But I think there are reasons in which we'll explore in this podcast as well why Carolina has dipped back into the market. And again, I think it's something that makes a ton of sense, especially, this is what we talked about in the other podcast, when you look at how influential the NBA has been from European and international players as well. I think it's a no-brainer from a program like Carolina that has a stature it has to look overseas in today's world in particular. So let's talk about maybe some of the reasons why. I think there's some important people behind the scenes that have maybe played an important role at this. So AJ, who do you think those people are, and why do you think Carolina has this offseason in particular gone back into the European and international market in particular?
Well, necessity, number one. They were more interested in, and by the way, I've watched about 10 or 12 games of Luca's, we'll call him Luca, and the announcers either say Bogovac or Bogovac. So I think Bogovac probably might be more accurate. We'll find out when he arrives. We'll ask him. But Jim Tanner has connections overseas. Buzz Peterson has scouted overseas. So I think that that's a huge thing. The problem is that Carolina is still going to struggle getting some of these guys through admissions. And in fact, when all the Lucas stuff was about to pop and we were ready when he did commit, David was checking a lot about, hey, is this guy going to get through admissions? And eventually he spoke to three people very close to the situation. All three said he shouldn't have any problem getting through admissions. So that's part of that's part of it. The other reason is they just haven't invested in that direction. So now they are. And they could have two starters. Now, Vesar from Europe by way of Arizona. He's a European guy, but they didn't pluck him from Europe to come to Chapel Hill. So Bogovac is even more a Euro guy because of that, because he comes straight from the Adriatic League over there, which is a pretty good league. So if both of them are Carolina's two best players, which is possible, that's very interesting what that could do perhaps to Carolina's. Illinois has a pipeline now. In fact, one of the reasons Stojakovic probably went there is because they have that flavor.
Isn't their whole starting five or projected starting five from Europe or something like that?
At least four, I think. I'm not 100% sure. I haven't brushed up on my Illini knowledge of that much lately.
Shame on you, right?
Yeah, shame on me. But it's heading that direction. Look at some of the best players in the NBA. Maybe the best player in the NBA is from Europe. And by the way, we all remember Max. Mm-hmm. We've got Izzy back here. Izzy is the surviving girlfriend. We say girlfriend because that little girl video about the boyfriend, Jared. My wife calls her girlfriend. It is Max's girlfriend / sister. She's terrified because we had a guy in here to look at our refrigerator a little while ago. So she's like draping herself around.
She's been all over you, man. She's been all around, man. She usually doesn't make an appearance.
Yeah, Max was the one that went through the window going after a gardener. Yeah. Izzy's the one that if a burglar came into our house, I probably shouldn't say this, they would never know we had a dog. Never know.
Polar opposite.
Izzy's the polar opposite. She's Isabel. We call her. My daughter calls her Izzy for short. So she is a non-threatening poocher, a terrified poocher. So anyway, back to the topic at hand. I said that because I saw her in the video. I think that this is something that can really open up the door. We did that podcast about 2 months ago, and now that they got Bogovac, and they were able to sell him. I think this is a significant move going forward. And let's face it, Carolina, I think, has a chance to be better, much better, perhaps. Now they got him, they added him to the roster, than had they just sealed everything shut a week ago and said, okay, this is our team. So he's going to help them in so many ways, as David and I have discussed, you and I have discussed. But he also could help them residually moving forward with getting more players from Europe.
Yeah, especially if he comes in and is good, like we know, I think there's an expectation that he will be. And I know you and David kind of talked about it in the podcast that you guys did when he committed about, well, how does like someone playing in the Adriatic League, how does that his production translate to, major college basketball? And I think that's something that you can look at other sample sizes of other guys that have done it and maybe take some things away. But again, it's something we're just going to have to kind of wait and see how he comes in and how he does, playing at a place like North Carolina. But
let me jump in fast. If you haven't read it, read it, because it's free on our site. David did an extensive interview with one of the top scouts in Europe.
Yeah, it's really good.
Extensively about Luca's game. And, he made no bones about it. There are certain aspects that are going to be a little bit challenging, but overall, very glowing. Maybe too glowing in some areas, some of the Steph Curry stuff and everything else. But I understand what he was saying. I don't think he was saying, hey, this guy's going to shoot like Steph Curry. There's some like stuff as far as the arc on a shot and that kind of thing. That's what he was alluding to. But he believes that of the European players that have come over to the United States here in the last couple of months, that Luca, after Dame Sarr, who I guess going to Duke, he has as good a chance of having a very, very successful year as any of them. So I'm going to put faith in what a guy who has seen him a ton over the years says about him, more than just watching a few clips, because the clips are always going to be positive. That's why I found some games to watch to see the negatives. Yeah,
and I think one of the interesting things too about dipping your toe in that market is one thing people forget or maybe didn't know about Bogovac is he's 21 years old right now. He'll be 22, before he plays a game at Carolina. I mean, and not only that, but he's a guy who essentially for the last 4 years has played against grown men in professional basketball. Again, albeit it's not the NBA, maybe not that level, but it's still, like you said, a really good level, especially overseas for basketball. So I think that's one of the big positives that you can sometimes achieve from going overseas. Obviously, you're not always going to do that. But for me, when you can go get a guy that has played professional basketball for 4 years and is, already 21 years old, has some of that experience and some of that life experience too, I think that's a major plus. And I think that's one of the advantages of dipping your toe in that market. So I think there are a lot. Yeah. And I know I think you and David hit on it some in your podcast too, maybe some of the financial reasons why it makes sense to go overseas. Maybe you can get guys a little bit cheaper than you can get guys now.
It depends on them. It
depends, obviously, but yeah.
We thought there was a deal in place for him to stay over there, and it fell through, which opened the door very quickly for Carolina. To your point, by the way, he's a professional. He's also been away from home for a while.
Yeah.
So he's a guy that's mature. He knows how to pick up after himself. Mm-hmm. Hubert's not going to have to worry about what Luca's doing. If Luca's, dotting his I's and crossing his T's, and really he blends in with a very experienced team. If the starting lineup is Evans, Trimble, Luca, Wilson, and Vesar, you've got a third-year guy, fourth-year guy, 22-year-old, a top 5 freshman, could be a lottery pick, and a 21-year-old third-year guy also from Europe who has a lot of the same characteristics Luca has. And that's pretty good, especially when you're coming off the bench with third-year guy, second-year guy, third-year guy, et cetera. So this is a mature team. He fits right in. He's not going to walk into a situation where there's a bunch of children there and he's turned off and doesn't get along. He ought to be able to adjust well and kind of mesh himself into things pretty well. And having Vesar there will help too. I could only imagine that was part of a drawing card for him. Because now he's got a dude that isn't from the same country, but there's some understanding of they're Euros, so they understand some things. Henry can teach him about the culture shock and some of the adjustments he needs to make off the court. And I would imagine on the court it'd be pretty seamless. He's a good player. If you look at what a lot of people who pay attention to European basketball have said, they say very, very positive things about him. So, and he's a pro.
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing that I think is intriguing is you can add pros to your roster in college now.
I know.
They are pros, but they're not pros in the same vein that the European guys are.
Yeah. Yeah, you're playing against grown men over there. You could be playing against a guy who's 35 years old or something like that. I know the skill level might not be the same as over here, but still, that plays a factor because physicality is such a major part of basketball, particularly college basketball nowadays as well, and athleticism and everything. So being exposed to, I think, that for a number of years it's never, in my opinion, going to be a negative. I think it's always a positive when you're, especially from the young age he started playing professional. He's someone who had to adjust to that too. So,
and like I've said before about football, you can load up with 4 and 5 stars on defense, but if they're not prepared well and they break the wrong way at the snap, suddenly they're a 3-star player.
Mm-hmm.
If a 3-star breaks the right way and reads the pre-snap situation real well, he's a 4-star, right? Mm-hmm. So in basketball, you can get extra juice from caginess, from smarts, from experience, from learning how to get guys on your hip and all that kind of stuff. Some of the things that get overlooked by a lot of fans. I'm not saying that's what Luca is, because I don't know enough about his game to say that, but the older players in college basketball have that, whether they're from the States or from Europe or whatever, and it helps them against some of the younger guys. So you're adding that element too. You're adding an element of a guy who was very young playing older people and had to figure out ways to make it happen for him, even if he isn't the best athlete out there. Some of the top players in the NBA are not the best athletes in the NBA, because they have some of that and they utilize that. So we'll see what he does. But I think that if this goes well, the point of the podcast here is that we might see Carolina look more into Europe moving forward, and really just internationally in general, because there's some pretty good basketball in Australia nowadays. They have a pretty good situation. They have a decent pro league that's gotten better, and they have a good sort of high school, post-high school basketball circuit in Australia as well. So you're seeing more of those kids come over.
Yeah, I think it definitely signals a new direction. Maybe Carolina's kind of dipping its toe back in, because like I said, it's something they've done in the past. It's just been a while since they've done it, and essentially getting 2 European guys. I know Vasar, like you said, played at Arizona, but still is a European player and came from Europe before that. I think it does signify a little bit of a change under, not a new regime because it's still Hubert Davis, but the kind of new regime in terms of Jim Tanner and Buzz Peterson that are working behind the scenes to scout these guys and go out and find players in the portal. And again, I think it just signifies a new direction that Carolina's going in. And if it works for him, and Vasar, we expect him to be really good. I think from all things that we've talked about and here and heard with Bogovac, expect him to be a really nice addition for Carolina as well. If you have success with those two guys, it'd be a no-brainer to not go back over there and dip your toe in it some more. So it's going to be interesting to see how it, this time next year, what maybe they're going in the market and getting a couple other guys. I think it's going to be an interesting thing to kind of watch over the next few seasons, no matter who is at the helm for North Carolina. Because, there's still some question marks about Hubert Davis and what might happen this year. But it's off season right now. Vibes are good. We don't need to talk about that yet. We'll cross that bridge when we need.
I'm going to close by saying there's a lot of unknown, and unknown makes it fun. And, exactly. and I do think that there's lots of potential uptick around there. So I'll just leave it at that.
I think it's a great way to end this one, AJ. I've been Jacob Turner. He's been Andrew Jones. Get involved. Do you like to see Carolina going back overseas? What do you think about the addition of Luca Bogovic? I know, go listen to the podcast that David and AJ did. You'll find it on our YouTube channel. It's doing really well numbers-wise. I'm sure a lot of people always enjoy listening to you and David hop on the podcast, man. He's absolutely fantastic. So,
and read the interview David did with the scout.
Yes. I'll try to remember to link it below. Yeah,
it's free right now.
Yeah, so free. Free. Okay.
All that stuff has been free the last couple of weeks.
Hey, man, giving stuff away for
free. Make sure you follow us on Twitter, at Heel Illustrated, on Facebook, Tar Heel Illustrated. We will have some news, and just so you know where to find us if there's some news to announce in the next month or so. Yeah,
absolutely. So if you follow on our socials, you'll stay up to date when any of that stuff might happen, when those announcements might happen, or whatever might happen with that. So yeah, appreciate everybody watching. As always, you guys know what to do over here. Like, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell too. You see it every single time we upload. See y'all next time. Thanks.
Thanks.